Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. You're watching In Deep on the Delta, and today I've got the man that changed the face of bass fishing, changed basically how it's done. Dee Thomas. Dee, thanks for showing up today. If you are a bass fisherman and you don't know who Dee Thomas is, I'm going to just talk a little bit about, I'll give you a little intro here, Dee, before you come in here and let some of the new people that are out there bass fishing, especially if you are a Delta man. Dee is a grandfather of the flipping technique fishing. He's in every Hall of Fame that I know of, the California Hall of Fame, Bass Fishing Hall of Fame. We can go on and on and on. I was talking to Dee before we turned the camera on, and he has been professional tournament angling for over 50 years. And I know you wanted to say a few words about Aaron Martins. Everyone knows Aaron passed away here a couple weeks ago, and Dee, a couple weeks ago we were talking, you said you thought Aaron might be the best angler in bass fishing.
No, I said he was the best angler I felt that was on the West Coast.
On the West Coast?
On the West Coast.
Okay.
I was jealous of Aaron when he first came onto the scene, because he was doing things I'd been trying to learn how to do. And he was just a little snotty-nosed kid, is all he was.
You said he was a little thin when he started.
He fished with his mom. That's who he fished with. And they won just about everything in sight. But before I go any further with this conversation, I'd like to send all my condolences to Aaron's wife and his two children.
And he was a great bass fisherman, and I didn't know Aaron, but from everyone that I've ever talked to that knew Aaron really just said he was a good person. You know.
I called him and talked to him probably 6 or 7 months ago. I spent about 30 minutes on the phone with him one day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first time me and Aaron's ever talked. You just don't hang out with the guys that you're jealous of. And I hate to say that, but he could do things I never thought about doing. Now you put me on a dirty water lake and I'd eat him alive.
Mm-hmm.
But when you go to a place like Meade or Powell or Mojave, get out of his way, because he'll get you every time.
Yeah. Well, and again, he will go down in history as one of the great bass fishermen of all time, and I know everyone's going to miss him, and it's a shame that he didn't get a few more years here. I've interviewed a lot of bass fishermen, a lot of fishermen in the past, but very seldom do I ever get to talk to somebody that's changed the game. And so let's start off back when you were, was it the 50s, 60s, 70s? I know you started tournament fishing in the 75?
74.
And we, guys, I got to go back just a little bit. I don't want to start talking about all the tournaments that Dee has won, all the boats that he's won, we'd be here all day talking about them. You can talk about your tournament wins if you want, if one pops up, but you've had so many of them. I tried to ask you how many tournaments you fish. You have no idea. How many? A lot of tournaments.
Yeah, a lot of tournaments, yes.
And when you started, before you were flipping or tule dipping, why did you decide that this was a technique that you thought you were going to come out and start catching fish? And once you did it, talk about how the progression was and how your bass fishing changed. You didn't obviously start bass fishing in tournaments and winning everything. There was a progression for you. So how did that happen?
You're wrong. What happened was, back when I was a young man, in my 20s, I didn't start fishing tournaments till I was 33. But when I was in my 20s, I owned about every bomber they ever made. Because that's what I did. I throwed bombers. I was a chunk it and wine. And the biggest 10 fish we were caught in one day of bombers was 59.5 pounds. And we caught those out of Ukiah up of Mendocino. That's where we caught them at. The biggest 5 fish I ever caught, or biggest 10 fish we ever caught in one day, flipping, was 69.5 pounds.
69.5 pounds.
And that was out of Folsom.
Folsom Reservoir here.
Yep. One right there above Sacramento.
Am I going to the right, Folsom Reservoir?
Yep.
The reason I mentioned that you changed the world of bass fishing, you were using a long rod at that time. Were you always using these tule dipping rods? How did that happen?
No, when it all started out, the people that started tournaments on the western United States was a guy named Wayne Cummings and Jerry Abney. They started the circuits out here. And they called me, Wayne called me probably 3 or 4 times, trying to get me to come and fish his tournament because I had an ego you couldn't carry it around the back of your pickup. But I would send in pictures to Western Bass. And I got the front page of their magazine, 8 or 10 times. And anyway, to make a long story short, they had a little tournament that was going to have, and it was going to be at Berryessa. It was a team event, and we weighed 10 fish. That's what we could weigh. I said, well, we don't have a bass boat. He said, what do you guys fish out of? Well, me and my buddy at the time was Chet Anderson. Me and him would take 2 boats, turn them upside down, and put them on top of the pickup, run boards across the top, lay the boats on top of these boards, and tie it down. Put all the outboard motors underneath the boats.
And that was your tournament boat?
Well, we hadn't done no tournaments yet. We're going all over the state. We went to Shasta back one day and fished. We went everywhere and fished. Any place you could win a hook, we dropped it in the water. Well, they wanted me to fish this tournament, and I said, we fish a little unorthodox. He said, what do you guys do? I said, we're tule dippers. He says, you're tule dippers? I said, yeah. He said, well, you can use that. Come on down. I said, all right. So we take off and we go to Berryessa. We get to use both of our boats because we're going to weigh 5 fish apiece. But we can combine our weight.
Oh, so when you fished tournaments back then, that your partner?
Just that one tournament.
Okay.
So me and Chet shows up. We put the boats in the water and we go out and fish Saturday, first day of the tournament. I think Chet caught 2 and I caught 1. We had 3 or 4 fish between us. That's all we had.
Now, let me back up for some people. Some folks might not understand what tule dipping in is. When you first started
I was
tule,
going to get to that.
Oh, okay. I'll let you carry on.
So anyway, we took and you broke my whole train of thought, son.
Yeah, you guys.
When you
split
get to
up
be
your,
my age, you stop.
That's okay.
Trouble.
That's okay. So you got 2 boats going up to Berryessa. You caught 5 pounds of fish or something the first day.
I don't know what the weight
What it
was.
was.
I had 1 4-pounder in the 3 or 4 fish that we weighed. And I told Wayne, I said, we're not going to do this another day. It was a 2-day event. I said, we're going to Clear Lake. We're meat hunters. We fished for meat. That's what we did back in those days. And so we loaded the boats up and had weenies with them, and me and Chet left. Went on up to Clear Lake, and they wasn't biting at Clear Lake either. Went over to Ukiah, they wasn't biting at Mendocino either. So we come home. We was back at the house by 3:30. And I'm sitting there, I lived in Newark at the time, and I was sitting there at the house having a beer, looking out my front window. And Jimmy Roberts pulls up out in front. He's one of the guys that talked me into going up there. He pulls up out in front, and he gets out of his car, and he goes around, opens up his trunk. He starts taking these gargantuous trophies. Back in those days, they'd give away the real deals. Trophies were that thick, that big around for the big fish, that big around for the angler for the Win. And they were all done on big pieces of redwood, is what they were done on. He gets these 3 big trophies out, and he comes walking up the driveway, can't hardly carry them. So I said, what are you doing, guy? He says, well, these are you guys' tournaments. He says, you won everything. We fished one day and we won. Well, at that point, I totally lost interest in tournaments because there was no challenger. So I quit. I didn't fish no more for a while. And then Wayne called me up again, and they're talking to me again about come fishing a tournament. And the next one was at Clear Lake, all team tournament still. I said, all right. So me and Dave Myers, we go up to Clear Lake. We fish Clear Lake, and we get skint. We get beat up on real bad. Well, that upset me. So I asked Davis, "Can we fish another one?" He said, "Sure." I said, "When's the next one?" He says, "At Berryessa." It was about a month away. I said, "All right." We go to Berryessa, and there was no contest. We weighed over 60 pounds that day, that weekend.
And were you tule dipping or flipping?
We were still using our tule dipping rods.
Mhm.
Well, they give us a lot of crap at the ramp. I get home. Before the weekend comes, Wayne Cummings on the phone calling me. He said, "Dee, I got to cut that rod down." I said, what do you mean you got to cut that rod down? He said, "I'm getting too much flack from the people." He says, "How long can I make it and still keep you fishing?" Well, I was out in the garage, and I had a place where I hung all my racks, my striper bass gear and stuff on the wall. I had some ferrulite Fenwicks back when they made it with no ferrule, it was just a glass. And I picked it up into the butt, and I felt that because I was extremely strong when I was younger. I could hold it like that and do the thing I wanted to do. And I looked at the length of the rod, and it said 7.5 feet. I said, "Make him 7.5 feet, and I'll fish."
And Dee, just to go back a little bit, the reason that this guy come up and said you got to cut this thing down because you were winning everything.
No, we ain't got there yet.
Oh, ain't got there yet.
No, I'm telling you just the way it happened, all the way up.
Okay, all right.
I don't need to insert thing, because I'm taking step by step for you, son.
I'm learning here.
Well, you broke the train of thought again.
That's okay. He said you got your striper rod. It's 7.5.
7.5 feet,
Yeah.
and this is if you'll make it that long, I'll fish with it. He says, "Okay." Well, the next one was San Antonio.
Mm-hmm.
We get to use the big rods there. We go down there and we just waylay them. And then he called me after the San Antonio tournament. That's when he called me. Well, Dave Myers met me at the San Antonio tournament, who was the Fenwick's rep at the time. And Dave says, "I'd like to talk to you about a sponsorship." I says, "All right." He says, "I'll fly up to your house." I says, "All right." So he lived in Westminster. I lived over in Newark. So he comes up, whatever he came up. I take him out striper fishing, wind him a diamond, and don't even bring nothing up. He's getting ready to leave, go back to play. He said, "Oh, we got to talk about those sponsorships." I says, "All right." He said, "What would it take for us to sponsor you?" I told him. He said, "Man, I can get Roland Martin for that." I said, "You need to get a plane ticket to Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. That's where Roland lives."
Mm-hmm.
I says, "Because I won't sell any cheaper than that." So he says, "I'll get back to you." About a month later, he called me and said, "I'd like to come up and talk to you again about that sponsorship." And I says, "All right, come on up." So he came up, gave me everything I asked plus.
Can we ask what you asked?
Ain't none of your business.
I thought you were going to tell me that. I appreciate that. So you got what you wanted, though.
I got everything I wanted from Fenwick except for one thing. I didn't get no royalty on none of the rods. If I'd got $1 royalty, I'd have been a multi-millionaire now.
And that is the birth of the flipping rod. So Fenwick made the first flipping rod.
Absolutely. Dave Myers, the rod that he brought up about, I told him what the dimensions, I told him the way I wanted the texture, the bend, I wanted it just exactly how I wanted the rod. The rod that I wanted, he couldn't build it because he couldn't sell it. The original 7.5 foot fiberglass rod, one piece,
Mm-hmm.
and it was perfect. It was a little heavier than what I wanted, but it was perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And we go to Don Pedro, first place we try this rod out. Dave comes up and he's got brand new rods. We go to Pedro. So I'm up there trying to do it like I say, where you just hold the handle. Because I cut all the handles off the reel. I cut the reel down and made it as light as I could. And it wasn't working. Why I did it, I don't know, but I reached up in front of the first guy, pulled it back, made a flip, turned it loose. But the other day, I'm going down a bike just flipping my head off.
So that's
was
when
it was born.
Well,
It was born on a Fenwick flipping stick, Now, like I told you earlier, Dee Thomas didn't invent nothing. The good Lord just put all the steps there.
And you climb the steps. Well, you're the guy that climbed the ladder. And I guess it's fair to say, and I don't want to jump ahead of you because I'm afraid you're still in pretty good shape. I don't want you to throw me down off this chair and we'll have to wrestle you down.
Now, 10 years ago, maybe.
So I guess that's when you really took off and people started saying, this guy's got something.
You want to know when it really exploded? I can tell you exactly when it exploded.
Okay.
Dave Myers got on a plane and flew back and met with Harold Sharp and Ray Scott. And they told him, we're going to send the guy back here to flip, or not flip. We're going to send the bad guy back here to fish for tournaments, and he's going to win. But he fishes a little unorthodox. Oh, Ray Scott jumped right up. Well, you send your boy back here. My boys will take care of him.
And Ray Scott, for those of you young fellows that don't know Ray Scott, he was that was his tournament.
Number one. He was number one in making up tournaments. He's the one that did it all.
So Ray Scott, he's the founder. He's kind of the godfather of tournament
all over the
directors.
United States. All over the United States. He's the guy that built the bass circuit, BASS. That was his baby. Well, Harold Sharp says, wait a minute, because Harold always had his head on straight. He says, Dee has to play by California rules if he comes back here. They had two sets of rules in their tournament then. One for the guys fishing BASS, and a set of rules for Dee Thomas. And it's been like that throughout my whole career. So Dave says, that'll be fine, he can do that. So he comes back, tells me what he's done. I says, all right. I said, where we're going? He said, we're going to go to Toledo Bend. I says, all right. You ever been to Toledo Bend?
I have not been to Toledo Bend.
You see all those lures on the wall over there, right there?
I do.
That's how thick the trees are on Toledo Bend.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll kill you. Before we got there, the week before we got there at Flying Bridge, a guy left the marina, didn't go out 300 yards, hit a stump, got thrown out of the boat come around and killed him. That's how dangerous it is to fish some of that water back there. I get back there and I can't see nothing. I ain't got a boat. I'm going back there to draw no boat. I was at the mercy of Lanny Varner the first day, in which he really dug a hole on me real good. And then the next day I drew two guys. I drew a guy that him and his son fished at tournaments. I forget his name. Wood or Ward or something like that. But anyway, he fished worms. I'd never fished a worm before in my life. I didn't know how to fish worms. I either tula dipped or I cranked. That's what I did. So anyway, I got snapped around pretty good in that tournament. But we still stayed for the awards because I got to beat Rollo Martin. I got to beat Bill Dance because they knew all those folks.
Mm-hmm.
I got to meet all these guys. Well, we stayed for the awards. And me and Dave Myers were like a couple little kids. We're the last one in the auditorium was Ray Scott and Harold Sharp. We chit-chatted a little bit. He says, by the way, Dave, he says, you can bring that California money back here anytime you want to. We'll be glad to keep it for you. Ray Scott never knows what he did for me then. I don't get angry very often, but when I left down there, I was madder than a hornet. I asked Dave, I didn't talk to Dave for 2 states coming back. Then I asked old Dave, I said, can we go back fishing to the tournament? He says, yeah. I said, can you pick one that ain't got all that wood in it, where you can manipulate and get around in? He says, yeah. He picks Bull Schultz. He says, that's the next one. I said, all right, let's go. We go back there, still ain't got a boat to fish out of. Dave's got his boat, but I ain't got a boat. Anyway, we go to the drawings. I drew out this guy, the first day I drew out this fellow from Arkansas. Wished I could remember his name, but I can't. And he wanted me to take my boat. Well, I didn't have a boat. And I said, don't you have a boat? And he says, yeah, I got a boat, but it's not a very good one. I said, does it float? And he says, yeah. I said, you got a trolling motor on it? He says, yeah. I said, the motor work? He says, yeah. That's all a boat is, a fishing platform. That's all it is. I don't need $100,000 boat to go catch black bass. He says, well, we can take my boat. He says, but now I want you to take the boat. Now he's telling me he wants me to take his boat. Go any place you want to, and we'll fish everything you want to fish. He says, I don't want to run trolling motor today. I said, all right. I said, I'll tell you what, let's do. I caught one keeper. It's only about 2 miles from the ramp. Let's go over there, drop the trolling motor, fish our way back to the ramp. He says, okay. So we go over there. I go about 100 yards past where I caught that fish. And I figure I got all day to get back to the ramp. So I start working my way back. I get up to where I caught the fish at. I don't get nothing. I go down the bank about another 20 yards. And we got a V goes into the bank. It's probably, maybe 10 feet deep, probably 5 feet wide at the mouth, and tapers down to nothing in the back. But in the back of that thing, about half of it was full of little bitty wood chips, sawdust and wood chips, because the lake had come up. And I thought, I wonder, when I flipped this little 3/8 ounce hair jig over there, got it on top of that wood, kept shaking and shaking. That was the first fish that was ever punched. Get it to go down through this crap, sinks just a little bit, and it goes tick. I set the hook and snatched a 14-incher out of there. I go another 15, 20 yards down the bank, and I throw up next to this tree, had some stuff floating on it. 1/5 straightens my hook out, because the water's real clear and I can see him, he straightens it out. Well, I only wound up catching 7 fish that day. I caught 7 fish that day. And I figured I'd be sitting somewhere around 50th place with 7 fish. When I came in, I looked up at the leaderboard, and I was one of the last boats to weigh in. I moved into 2nd place. Tommy Martin was the only guy ahead of me. So I go to Dave Myers. I said, can I use your boat tomorrow? He says, why? I said, because I can win this tournament. He says, you think you can? I says, yeah, I know I can. He's all right, because I knew then I could play with the big boys. So he's all right, you got it. So lo and behold, we're heading back to get my crap out of the guy's boat. And Lanny Varner standing out there having a real heated discussion with Harold Sharp. He says, Harold, I don't think I should have to fish for that guy from California again, not 2 tournaments in a row. And Harold says, Lanny, you should look at the leaderboard. I turned around and looked up the leaderboard. Oh, hell, I've always wanted to fish for that guy. So Lanny comes running over to me, and he tells me, he says, we paired out. I said, really? He says, yep. He says, you beat me here and here and here, and he says, I'll have everything ready to go. I says, nah. I said, don't work like that. He says, what do you mean? Yeah, this guy is corn-fed Okie, chews tobacco, wears overalls, and he's just a tank of a man. He's a big guy. And he's young, and he's a scary-looking dude, you want to know the truth about it. So anyway, this guy, he takes and he says, what do you mean? He says, we got to have a boat. I said, I got a boat. He says, you got a boat? And I said, yeah, I do. He said, what kind of boat you got? I said, I got a Monarch. Got an 85, 115 on the back, that's what it was. He says, you got a Monarch? And I said, yeah, I do. He says, either a Monarch or a Skeeter. I'm not sure now. I think it was a Skeeter.
It was a bass boat.
It was a bass boat. So anyway, yeah, I said, now we're going to have to flip a coin for the boat. I says, and if you win, this is how it's going to go. We're going to take your boat, you're going to pick the water, and that's where we're going to fish. You won't take me to those fish that you found us now. Ain't gonna happen. You think I'm gonna take you someplace to make a star out of you? Ain't gonna do it. He said, we'll take your boat. It's okay. Enough said. So we take off. We go over to where I started at the first day. Within an hour, I had a bite. I knew everything had changed. I said, where can I go? Then Theodosia came into mind. Never been there by boat. So I was going to make a little run. Picked it up, took off toward. I looked at the map enough that I knew where I should be. I picked off and headed in that direction. After I'd run about 20 miles, Lanny raised up and he says, "They," he says, "quit running the river. Run from point to point." He said, "You come around this point, head to the next point over there. Don't run the bends in the river." If he hadn't have told me that, I'd still been floating around in that lake. So we finally get up to Theodosia, which was about an hour away, a little better. I said, I better gas this thing up. So I pull into the gas station up there. The boat carries 18 gallons. I put 18.6 gallons in it.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me it was meant to be, bud. So I go up to the first place I want to fish after we get everything squared around. I know I can't run around because we need all that fuel to get back. Pull up on this tree and I flip in there. Another one over 5 straightens that hook out. Gone. I pulled off the bank, got down in my tackle box, pulled out a 34-185 O'Shaughnessy forged steel hook, 5/0, put that on, scraped all the hair off of it almost. Put a little white 2-inch doolally worm on the back of it.
A doolally.
Doolally worm, a white one.
Okay.
Pulled up there, made a little flip alongside that tree, tick, whack. Jerked 4 fish out of that tree up to 5 pounds and bounced every one of them. Lanny is going nuts from the back seat. So we keep going down the bank. I catch another one. And he says, "Thomas?" "Yeah, what do you want?" He says, "I'm going to file a protest on you when we get in." He says, "You're going to file a protest on me?" I said, "For what?" He says, "You're front-ending me. God is my witness." I said, "I'm only going to show you one time. I'm leaving plenty of fish for you, one time only." I go to the back of the boat and I stand right alongside of him. And I just went past this little pine tree that was probably 6-8 feet tall, maybe that big around. It had a whole bunch of that floating debris around it. I flipped over in front of it in the sun. I flipped the shade coming up. But I flipped the sun. It sank about 14 inches. I give pop, jerk another 14-incher out, unhook him, put him in live well, close the live well, say, "Showing you again," and went back to the front. He never spoke to me again the rest of the day. And he was pulling logs that big in. We get back to the marina. Shut down a bit because we have to idle ways to get up. We're putting our boats up on sandy beaches back there. He said, "I ain't going to the scales with you." I just jerked it neutral. I says, "Lanny, there ain't no doubt in my mind that you can whip my tutu." I said, "But I promise you I will chew you up while you're doing it." I said, "Now you pick the piece of real estate you want to get on and do this." I started laughing. He says, "It's taken me all day to upset you." And he said, "I finally got her done." He said, "I'd be proud to go to the scales with you." So we go to the scales and Scott asked me, "How'd you enjoy today?" And he looked at him and grinned. He says, "It was an experience." Going back to the boat, Lanny is surrounded by Tom Mann, Roland Martin, Hank Houston was there. There's 3 or 4 of the guys there. It's just a crowd. As I'm walking past him to get to my boat, he reaches out and grabs me and jerks me in the center of all of them. He says, "I want you," I ain't going to use the language he used, but I want you to look at these guys. He said, "I've been fishing against them since 1966, and they won't even give me the time of day." He said, I got something now they want. He said, you got my word, I won't give it to them. And he didn't.
So that's how it all happened.
That's how it all happened.
Well,
Every bit of it.
ladies and gentlemen, don't let anybody ever tell you different. Dee is the man. If he says it happened that way, it happened that way. And I could also say, you don't want to mess with Dee Thomas. That's what I learned from this.
No.
So Dee, we got that whole history. For the people that are out here on the Delta and they're learning, or maybe they've been out there for a while, they're just not catching enough fish. Give them a few suggestions. Is it the bait you're using? Is it the place you're fishing? Is it the tide? Is it your equipment? Just give a quick few suggestions for some of the newer anglers out there, how they can go out and catch some fish.
Well,
on the Delta.
If you want to go to the Delta and catch fish, I'd have to say there's two guaranteed ways you're going to catch them.
Guaranteed.
You tie on a 5 or a 6-inch Senko, no weight, throw it on 12 or 15 pound test line, or you take a drop shot. You use those two techniques, and I guarantee you, you'll catch some fish.
How about if you want to get the biggest fish out of the river?
You should have talked to the guy who left the store when we left here a while ago.
A frog.
Frog.
That's it, guys. You want to catch a lot of fish. You're talking about a 5 or 6 inch Senko drop shot. You want to catch the biggest fish. You throw a frog on 65-pound braid, and that's coming.
What's 65?
65-pound braid.
I throw 40.
Okay, Dee throws it on 40, and that's the ticket. So Dee, thanks so much for telling your stories, and I'm going to put this out there, and I think it's important for people to know the history of bass fishing, and you're the guy to get it from. So again, thanks a lot for showing up and doing the interview, and best of luck for you in the future. I know you're still fishing tournaments, aren't you?
Yeah.
Check out Dee Thomas, and I don't think you haven't won your last tournament yet. I
won one this year.
Oh, one last question. How many wins do you have on the tournament circuit?
Oh God, man.
I know you can't answer that. So guys, thanks for tuning in.
I can tell you how many national tournaments I won.
Okay, nationals.
13.
13 national tournaments. You said you quit counting how many boats?
I'll be conservative. I'll say 15.
15 boats. An amazing life of fishing. You still got the passion to do it. I bumped into you at you don't hang out at a coffee shop. You hang out at a bait shop.
Oh yeah, my favorite place is this one right here. One of the favorites. It's the Bass Hole. Good guy owns it, Rob Clodier.
We're going to talk to Rob.
But he's something better than Rob's his wife, Rachel.
Oh, okay. Well, we're going to talk to Rob today, and I'll get you guys all hooked up on the Bass Hole here. And again, Dee, thanks a lot. Make sure you check out this whole interview. It's been fascinating, and we'll see you on the water, Dee.
I hope not.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.